Reading 96 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3. Great Animal House, November 1st, 1947. The Work-Octave III. For right valuation, the work must become emotional. A man, a woman, should begin to see for themselves the truth of the work. Why? Because otherwise it cannot become emotional. That is, it cannot touch the emotional center. If it does not, it merely remains in the external memory of the formatory part of the intellectual center. It is a detached memory, not affecting one's life. It is a memory comparable, say, to remembering the dates of battles in history. It is not yet a part of oneself. Now, it is sometimes said that one of the supreme objects of the work is to awaken the emotional center. What can it mean to awaken the emotional center? As we are, the emotional center is in a very bad state. It is impure. Let us speak of this impurity. No one who has begun to sound the note ray of the work in his or her life, that is, to apply sincerely the ideas of the work to themselves through self-observation, can possibly deny the great power of negative emotions. The emotional center is impure, first of all, from the terrible mass of negative emotions that govern us and all mankind. I remind you again of what the work says, that it is not desires of sex or of power that govern the world, but negative emotions. And this applies to each of us. We are taught that the emotional center is born in us, free of a negative part, but since we are born amongst sleeping people, all deeply under the power of negative emotions, we acquire in a short time a negative part of the emotional center, which increases more and more. This, then, is one of the impurities affecting this center, which, if it begins to work aright, marvelously supplies us with what we lack and gives an inner source of force that I cannot explain to you in any words. As it is, we have a marvelous inner source of negative emotions and general unhappiness. So work, real practical and hard work, against negative emotions, by non-identifying with them, not consenting to them, not going with them, not believing them, separating the feeling of I from them, is necessary. Now it is impossible to pass from the note mi to the note fa in the work octave if one believes in one's negative emotions. Only the realization of the truth of the work can make it possible to pass from mi to fa. That is, for help to be given you to do so. You have to see by self-study that negative emotions always lie and pervert the truth. They take everything as they wish to take things. Negative emotions distort everything. They malform, they twist, they deny, they hate. For at bottom, all negative emotions lead down to hate and violence, and so also to fear. Hate, violence, and fear form a typical triad of forces, and each one depends on the others. As a result of this distortion that negative emotions produce in oneself, several forms of lying result. And again, it is necessary to understand that no one can pass from the note mi to the note fa unless they know all about how they lie and have observed lying in themselves. There are many forms of lying that the work speaks of. One that is comparatively harmless is writing or telling something that happens in a way that puts you in a good light. But there are some very evil forms of lying that spring from deep-seated negative states that are not acknowledged and are surrounded by clouds of self-justifying. If they are not acknowledged, the person concerned can only sound a very poor me. He does not know himself and, as is often the case, absolutely refuses to broaden the consciousness of himself to include his lying. Sometimes this is due to some extraordinary self-satisfactory picture of himself being just and honorable and all the rest of it that prevents him from this necessary increase of consciousness, only gained at the cost of his vanity. Remember in this connection that every time we say I, we are really lying. Which I? We all for a long time say I with such emphasis and confidence, as if real I controlled all we do and say and think and feel. But if we sound eventually a broad me, such illusions are no longer powerful. We have, in short, to come to accept, to endure what we are, which is the only way to accept and endure others in the work. To return to the question of the impurity of emotional center, there is another impurity which is best illustrated by what Mr. Ouspensky wrote about in Tertium Organum. I will make the following quotations and then leave the matter for discussion, emphasizing the observation, it is impossible to know through impure emotions. Mr. Ouspensky wrote, impure emotion gives obscure, not pure knowledge, just as impure glass gives a confused image. Pure emotion gives a clear, pure image of that for the knowledge of which it is intended. This is the only possible decision of the question. The arrival at this conclusion saves us from the common mistake of moralists, who divide arbitrarily all emotion into moral and immoral. But if we try for a moment to separate emotions from their usual moral frames, then we see that matters are considerably simpler, that there are no, in their nature, pure emotions, nor impure in their nature, but that each emotion will be pure or impure, according to whether or not there are admixtures of other emotions in it. There can be a pure sensuality, the sensuality of the Song of Songs, which initiates into the sensation of cosmic life and gives the power to hear the beating pulse of nature. And there can be impure sensuality, mixed with other emotions, good or bad from a moral standpoint, but equally making muddy the fundamental feeling. There can be pure sympathy, and there can be sympathy mixed with calculation to receive something for one's sympathy. There can be pure love of knowledge, a thirst for knowledge for its own sake, and there can be an inclination to knowledge, wherein consideration of utility or profit assume the chief importance. In their outer manifestations, pure and impure emotions may differ very little. Two men may be playing chess, acting outwardly very similarly, but in one will burn self-love, desire of victory, and he will be full of different unpleasant feelings towards his rival, fear, envy of a clever move, spite, jealousy, animosity, or schemes to win, while the other will simply solve a complex mathematical problem which lies before him, not thinking about his rival at all. The emotion of the first man will be impure, if only because it contains much of the mixed. The emotion of the second will be pure. The meaning of this is, of course, perfectly clear. Examples of a similar division of outwardly similar emotions may be constantly seen in the aesthetic, literary, scientific, public, and even the spiritual and religious activities of men. In all regions of this activity, only complete victory over the pseudo-personal elements leads a man to the correct understanding of the world and of himself. All emotions, colored by such self-elements, are like concave, convex, or otherwise curved glass, which reflect rays incorrectly and distort the image of the world. Therefore, the problem of emotional knowledge consists in a corresponding preparation of the emotions which serve as organs of knowledge. Become as little children, and blessed are the pure in heart. In these evangelical words is expressed, first of all, the idea of the purification of the emotions. It is impossible to know through impure emotions. Therefore, in the interests of a correct understanding of the world and of the self, man should undertake the purification and the elevation of his emotions.